Chapter 1, Introduction, Themes in the Study of Life. Concept 1.1, Themes make connections between the various parts of biology. In this concept, we're going to cover emergent properties, levels of biological organization, and the characteristics of life. At the end of this recorded lecture, you should be able to briefly describe the unifying themes that characterize the biological sciences. The first connecting theme in biology that we're going to talk about are emergent properties. Living organisms are good examples of emergent properties, which could best be described by the phrase, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Yeah, right, what does that mean? Let's use the example of this cell. It is made up of mainly carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, with some nitrogen and phosphorus and a few other elements thrown in for spice. If you were to take all those separate elements and throw them into a beaker, you wouldn't have a cell. You'd have escaping gases and a pile of impure charcoal. But a cell, it can divide like it's doing in this micrograph. The chemicals in the beaker that make up the cell can't do that. The cell can control its internal environment and respond to the outside environment, which the chemicals in the beaker can't do. The cell has emergent properties, or properties that were not found at the level of the chemicals that make up the cell. Now let's move up the scale. Suppose those cells are a part of this lovely blossom-covered tree. The individual cells can't form a blossom, branches, trunk, and roots. That takes a lot of cells doing different jobs. The tree has emergent properties, or properties that are not found at the level of the cell. At each level, the different parts of a biological system work together to do more than the separate parts could by themselves. Non-biological systems generally do not show emergent properties. As a part of this idea of emergent properties, biologists tend to look at the different levels of organization and how they interact. The textbook starts at the top level of organization and moves down, but I'm going to go in the opposite direction. It fits better with my example of emergent properties that I used in the previous slides, and that's also the direction we're going to take in this course. Atoms are the smallest unit of matter that behaves like its element. Molecules are atoms that have formed bonds and associations. Molecules have different properties than the atoms that form them, but those properties are influenced by atoms. We'll learn more about that in the following chapters. Molecules form parts of a cell or organelles, such as the chloroplast in the diagram. Once again, a chloroplast has the ability to convert energy of the sun into the chemical energy of sugars, which is beyond the ability of the carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins that make up the chloroplast. The chloroplast is one example of an organelle within a cell. See all those lovely chloroplasts within that plant cell? All of the organelles and membranes and such make up the plant cells in this diagram. The cell is the basic unit of life. Technically, if you aren't a cell, you aren't alive, although scientists that study viruses may still be arguing that one. In this course, we will be studying life up to the level of the cell. Other biology courses will take up other levels of organization. We'll mention them here briefly. Cells combine to form tissues, and tissues combine to form organs, such as this leaf. Bet you thought just animals had organs. Organs go on to make up organisms, if the organism is a multicellular organism. If the organism is a unicellular organism, it skips tissues and organs. Organisms of the same kind form populations, like all of these trees in the forest. Populations of different kinds of organisms, such as all the life in the forest, are considered communities. We humans generally think of just the plant and animal life in communities, but communities are made up of fungi, bacteria, archaea, and protozoa as well. Well, enough of the plug for microbiology. Different communities interact with and are influenced by the non-living elements in their physical environment. That would include the minerals in the soil, mountains, rivers, and so on. This is called an ecosystem. See, they've included a picture of the lake in the forest. All of the ecosystems on the planet interact. Dust from the Sahara blows across the Atlantic Ocean and feeds the Amazon rainforest, which is a nutrient-poor soil. Ocean currents in the Atlantic Ocean influence if northern Africa is suffering a drought or if the rains come. All of these ecosystems together are the biosphere, or the planet. So far as we know, that's as far as biological organization goes, but you never know, we're finding new planets outside of our solar system all of the time. But then again, if we find life on another planet, unless we find evidence that they're interacting, we probably will keep things at the level of the biosphere. Now let's talk about the characteristics of life. All living organisms show these 7 characteristics. Living organisms show increasing levels of order that we've been talking about. Enough said about that one. Populations of organisms exhibit adaptation to their environments over time. This is called evolution. We'll be talking more about that later too. Living organisms respond to the environment, like this Venus flytrap has snagged a dragonfly-looking insect in response to a touch outside of itself. Living organisms make more of themselves or reproduce. Reproduction can involve 2 parents, like with these penguins, or 1 parent, like the cells in the skin of the penguin. 2 parents is sexual reproduction, 1 parent is asexual reproduction. Living organisms grow and develop. They get bigger and change, generally, as they get bigger or mature. Living organisms take energy from their environment and convert it into chemical energy, so they can grow, develop, reproduce, and so on. And lastly, living organisms regulate themselves to maintain an internal balance. This jackrabbit is using its large ears to keep its internal temperature within the narrow range that keeps it alive. Individual cells maintain a narrow range of salt content, acid versus base, and energy processing. Well, that's it for this concept. As a reminder, after listening to this lecture, you should now be able to briefly describe the unifying themes that characterize the biological sciences. Now, you can listen to this recording over and over again. Remember, you can stop it, pause it, fast forward through the parts that you've got, and make sure if you have any questions to bring them to lecture.